It's the Digital Babble with your host, Flipper. Colorful commentary on your photography. Seen on fingerlakes1.com.
Hey. All right, that worked. Hey, everybody, that was fun. Just started the video feed and something fell down behind me. That was just great. So, welcome to this week's edition of the Digital Babble on this fine rainy day. This week we're going to be talking a lot more about exposure, but we're going to do it as in shutter speed. We're going to focus on the shutter speed. I've had a few questions come in about the different things about shutter speed that can affect your image quality and your situation where you're hand holding your pictures and you take the shot and then you go download your pictures and they still look blurry. In some respects, we want that effect. As you'll see later in the show, we got 3 images that loyal listeners and people that follow the show submitted already for review. So a little bit later in the show, we're going to do those. And I've got those up on screen. I'm just kind of checking everything, making sure everything looks good, except for my video cam. I need to fix that real quick. So pardon me for 1 second while I fix that. Hopefully. I guess not. So you're just going to have to put up with a blurry me every once in a while. Still trying to get the bugs worked out of this show. You know, once in a while you think you got it and then something else goes wrong. So here we are. So this week we're going to talk about shutter speed. Shutter speed is where the camera, and I've got a camera right here. This is a Canon G12, one of my favorite cameras that I got. And what happens is inside, whoops, wrong way. Inside the lens of the Canon G12, inside here, there's a shutter. And what this shutter does is then basically when you pull the trigger, it snaps the picture. So it opens the eye and then closes the eye. It's almost like a blink, like as a person blinks. And boy, I'm going to keep blinking if I don't fix that camera. Pardon me for 1 second, okay? If I can. It just does not like me. I cannot change the camera. Wow. Well, I guess let's work on it for next week. So the whole thing with the Canon camera is that you can take and, you know, this is a great example of what the how the shutter works and the way it works. And one of the things that you could do is set the shutter. So setting the shutter, let me get to my diagrams here. So as we talked about last week, the shutter speed is part of the triad for exposure. You have shutter, ISO, aperture. Shutter is the amount of time that the camera blinks or looks at something to give you an exposure. And that's basically how the picture is taken for the amount of time the shutter is open. So you can, it's like a faucet. You turn the faucet on, the water comes out. When you fill the glass, that's the proper exposure. Same concept with light. Light flows through the lens like water, hits the imaging plane for a certain amount of time to fill that image. And that's how this works. And one of the things that a lot of people don't get, and I just got to find my image here. In the viewfinder of an SLR or maybe even some of the other cameras that you might see something like this that's on screen. And right here where it says 2000, it basically is how the shutter is displayed on screen. So 1/60th of a second, 1/100th of a second, 150th of a second, 1/200th of a second, 1/2000th of a second. You can, a lot of SLRs can go quite high. The higher the fraction is, so 1/2000th of a second, means the faster the shutter is going to work. It takes less time for the shutter to actually open, close, and take the proper exposure. So this can open up some creative possibilities. So if you want to like freeze the action, like saying you're at a sporting event and you're going and you want to capture the football player as they're running down the field as fast as possible. You can pull up your camera, look at your exposure, and see what the shutter speed is. If it's too low, you're going to get a blurry picture. So like football is a great example. Somebody running at about 7 to 10 miles an hour, basically, and that's a pretty good sprint, is going to take probably about 1/200th of a second shot in order to freeze them in motion. In other words, everything is going to look tack sharp wherever you focused it, and it's going to freeze the action. A lot of people like that for sports action. Also, stock cars, racing. A lot of sporting events are usually where you want that freeze frame, that high shutter speed so you can get the freeze frame. Then you have the opposite side of the spectrum, which is the slow shutter speed. I got lots of slow shutter speed examples coming up here shortly that are really, really actually decent. I mean, I'm trying to do everything all at once here. I'm sorry. What was that? Okay. So there's a fast shutter speed, slow shutter speed, both sides of the fence. So the longer the shutter speed, so 1/2 of a second, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, are all long shutter speed. So the shutter stays open, so it's like you blink for a second and then close it. How much can happen in that second? That's basically how you got to think if you're trying to get creative with this. Shutter speed is a very, very big thing on getting creative. If you've ever been out in the evening hours or later evening where you have a lot of cars passing by with their lights on, slow shutter speed can give you this kind of ghosty, lights are just kind of traveling across your picture by having a long shutter speed. If you want water to look like say if you're pouring water out of a glass in front of the camera and you take a long exposure, instead of seeing the droplets coming out, you're going to see a nice kind of white painting, almost like somebody took a brush and painted the water on as it was dumping out of the glass. So that's the slow shutter speed side. Fast shutter speed. Back to fast shutter speed. It's amazing what you can do with fast shutter speed. If you got enough light and you got enough time to set up the shot, one of the most amazing shots I've always seen is where you take and you're pouring water out of a glass above the frame, so it comes down the frame, and then you toss a ball or a golf ball up into the stream and then snap the shot. It needs to be about 1/60th of a second with the right lighting, and it's so neat. The water is painted, but the golf ball looks perfectly still. It's really a neat shot. The way to set your shutter is again, you got to learn your camera, but on most SLRs and most point and shoots, usually there's either knobs. I gotta find it here. Like here, this front. Let's see if right here. This is the adjustment dial for the Canon G12. So if I'm pulling up to take a shot, and I'm looking at my view screen, and I see that it's 1/60th of a second, I can shift the exposure by just moving the knob left or right to increase or decrease the shutter speed. Depending on what your settings are for the camera, which we'll get into when we start talking specifically about cameras, instead of how they work, we're going to talk about actually how they, what they are and what they do. If you're on a setting that you can adjust your shutter speed properly, you can adjust it so that instead of 1/60th of a second, you can do 1/120th of a second, so that more gets frozen in the scene. If you want things more blurry, then you can go to 1/30th of a second. So every time you cut your shutter speed in half or double your shutter speed, that is what we call a stop of light. In other words, half the light is entering the camera just by changing that one setting. So let's see, I got a great example of a long exposure photo right here. This was taken up in the foothills, I guess if you want to call it the foothills of Pennsylvania. I took this waterfall shot at Ricketts Glen. Very wonderful place to go. Just take a lot of photos. I mean, they have like 25 different waterfalls ranging from 5 feet to I think 65 feet. So they call it the Niagara Falls of Pennsylvania. I'm not too keen on that name because I really think that Niagara Falls is a lot more impressive. If you haven't been to Niagara Falls, it's a great place to go. It's also a great photo opportunity in a lot of different areas. Shooting from the Canadian side and shooting back towards the American side, you can get some pretty amazing night shots because they light the falls up with LED lighting, reds and greens and blues, and just with the water flowing over top of it, taking a long shutter speed, you can get some quite interesting, almost painting, picturesque photos. So let's see, we're at 7:10. Trying to keep on track here because I want to really get to the photo edits, because last week a couple of comments were that everybody liked the photo editing, so I'll try to get to that sooner. So that's a great example of a slow shutter speed. Anything that's tack sharp is really a good example of a fast shutter speed. Now, one of the tips and hints that I want to give you before we move on is the fact that the shutter speed really is what defines if you can handhold a shot. So if I'm pulling up and I'm going to take a shot of you through the lens here, okay, and I'm going to take a shot, notice I can't really hold it still. You know, it kind of bobs and moves. That's basically camera shake is what we call that. And what that does is that if your shutter speed is not fast enough on the camera, basically you will see the motion blur as your camera moves up and down as you're trying to take a picture. So that's where shutter speed comes into play, and you really want to know what those settings are. You really want to understand it, because if you don't, you're going to get frustrated with photography and you're just going to put it down and just walk away. I know some amateurs that had taken a class recently, or I can't remember where, but it was a fun class, but it lacked some technical information that really would have helped these people, and they were just like, yeah, just pull up and shoot. That's a great thought process to get you out shooting, but you know, when 3/4 of your pictures come back blurry and you're not sure why, one of the best things I can tell you, the best hints I can tell you, is check your shutter speed on your shots. If they're less than 1/60th or 1/30th of a second, especially 1/30th of a second, or lower, so 1/30th, 1/15th, 1/10th, 1/5th, 1/2, or higher, you're going to get a lot of problems with camera shake. So, you know, you might be having a grand old time at the bar, there's just not enough light to take a picture with your cell phone, and you go to pull up and you take a picture with your cell phone, and later when you download it, it's just 3 blurry blobs of you guys just kind of hanging out, you know. Mostly that's because there's not enough light and the shutter speed was too slow. Cell phones, you can't really adjust it too much. I have yet to see a cell phone that, other than the smartphones, have any type of adjustment for shutter speed. Now, there was a question that was emailed in to me about iPhones and iPads. The iPhone doesn't necessarily have a shutter adjustment. I didn't see that on the app for that. But the iPad actually is quite interesting, and the question was where is the shutter on an iPad? Because nothing really moves on the iPad. That's because it's a webcam, and it's constantly taking video of what it's seeing. And what it does is it does an electronic shutter, and it says, okay, I want to do this exposure for 1/20th of a second. So electronically, it takes several frames for 1/20th of a second, smashes them together, and that's your final picture. That's pretty much the basics and the easiest way I think I can probably explain it to you guys. But that's the basis of the iPad, you know, and a lot of your tablet devices or webcams work off the same thought process. When you take a picture, if I were to snap a picture right now with my webcam that I'm doing this on, you would notice that the picture would look like a picture, but you'd still have a little bit of a blur because it's taking several pictures and kind of pushing it together. So that's really the basis of shutter speed. So we're at 7:15. I got a half hour left, and I'm going to start in with the photo edits. So let's go take a look at our first photo. And the first photo is somebody in Seneca Falls decided to send me this photo, and it's a very interesting photo. I really love this photo because it just brings out the creative possibilities to a long shutter exposure. So this was probably exposed. I didn't check the file. I could probably check it real quick. Let me check the file to make sure that I can give you the right information. I'm sure this was taken on a tripod. Yes. So the shutter speed on this was 20 seconds. So the camera was actually looking at the scene while sitting on a tripod being stable for 20 seconds while this photographer took the shot. It was also at f/22 and ISO 100, but that's not important right now because we're talking about shutter speed. And what I love about this is that right here, if you look, you got all these wonderful streaks of light, and these are the cars. You don't actually see the body of the cars, but you get all the taillights and the headlights coming to you, from you, to you, wherever, and it just makes a really interesting painting. You kind of almost get drawn in by the lines because the lines are amazing. I mean, really, this draws your eye into the building. The building's a little overexposed, but that's okay. You know, it kind of makes you kind of float right around this area. The other neat thing, let me clear the whiteboard here. The other neat thing that I really think is impressive, especially a lot of amateurs starting off don't realize that the lower, the smaller your aperture, so the higher the number, you end up getting these light star patterns, especially if you got something really bright. So like right here, notice the street light. Instead of just being a big blob of white, it actually has a star pattern to it, and it's very pretty. I really like seeing these because in the old days, you couldn't get this pattern just by using your aperture. You had to actually have a filter. It was called a star filter. You'd screw that on the front of the lens, and that's the effect you would get. Nowadays, a lot of times, because there's more blades in the apertures to adjust the opening or adjust the aperture, you can get this effect. And it's just kind of neat. And long exposure really exemplifies it. It makes it big, and and it's very pronounced. You can see it there. You can see it here. You can see it here. You can see it in the background over here. All the little lights. The bus who's sitting still. And the nice thing about this photo is it really tells a story. It kind of, I almost want to say this is in New York City at Grand Central Station. I almost want to say this is the entrance to Grand Central Station, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But it's just kind of neat, I mean, it must have been taken at New Year's, I'm assuming, or something, some type of celebration, because there's a bunch of stars here going across the street light or the trolley cable. The clocks are kind of neat because they're all frozen. They didn't blur out with being open for 20 seconds, which is great. And just a few of the colors. Now, the few things that I think I'm going to adjust with this and play around this, because I really think this is a wonderful shot. This is a great shot, no doubt about it. It had been on a tripod. The one thing that really just kind of gets my coffee percolating is the fact that it just is just so predominantly got lines. You've got the building lines. Okay. You got the building lines here, where the perspective of the building is. So right here, and then you got the building lines here that kind of bring it in here. You got the bus station line here. You got the lines of the lights kind of giving you this kind of draw your eye this way. No matter where you head in this picture, you're always getting some type of line to bring you back into the picture. Now, the two things that I think I really don't like about this, and it's not any detrimental to the photographer, I just don't like it because I think it's just way too yellowy, especially the building. And maybe what we can do is color correct this in Photoshop. Maybe get a few things really corrected a little bit, like the yellow here. Maybe get a little bit more contrast in the building, because it seems like right here we lose a lot of it. The building really gets kind of washed out, and you lose a lot of that detail of the brick. And the brick is really part of the picture here, is part of the storytelling here. It really makes the picture kind of, like, wow, this is an old building, but yet it's kind of modern and it's kind of neat. So why don't we take it into Photoshop and we'll see what we can do. So let me make sure to switch my camera angle, because last week I forgot to do that on one of the pictures, so I do apologize. So here we are in Photoshop, and I think what we're going to do, we're going to start off with, we're going to see if we can't color correct it without getting too crazy. One of the easy ways to do that is to bring up an adjustment level, which is what I just did. And then I'm going to adjust it based on these three little Dopplers over here, and this basically is your highlights, which is the white one, the midtones, which is your, or gray point, which is your middle one, and then the black one is your shadows. And basically, it really gives you the ability to pick something that's supposed to be neutral, and it'll automatically color correct it for you. So like we could take the dark ones and go up here and click the sky and just see if it corrects anything. Notice it didn't, probably because the sky is already completely black. So let's try picking something that should be gray. So I'm going to look around here in the photo here, and I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to see something. Let's see. How about these little clocks here? We'll see if that'll correct it. Oh, that's not good. That really made it to something. I don't know what to call that. That made it worse. Now, if you get in trouble here, and this is what I love to show you, because I mean, even the people that do this all the time get in trouble. We experiment all the time. It's part of the process. So you get into trouble, you could always sit here and just go back to your layers, take the layer, the adjustment layer, and just hit delete. Boom. There it is. It's gone. And that's the beauty of adjustment layers, because you're not destroying the picture. You're just adjusting it, and the layer does the work. So let's get back in here, and we'll do something with the levels a little bit again here. Let's see if we can't pick something a little better. Let's try white. We'll try the white or the highlights area. We'll try this light up here, see if we can't get it color corrected. I still think we're going to have a little bit of a problem with this. So maybe what we'll do is we'll neutralize the brick by grabbing something that should be gray here in the brick. And that's still way too much. Way too much. Let's get another one here. It's starting to bring it back a little bit. Try this guy over here. That's about, yeah, I'll take it. That kind of brings it in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to darken that brick up a little bit, see if we can't get some more of the detail back, and then we're going to make it a little bit more contrasty. Now notice that the picture looks horrible right now, because everything else that was fairly color corrected or looked fairly decent in the scene really took on another color cast. And what we're trying to do is to shift this color, just a brick color, and get the brick exposure a little bit better, so that we can get, you know, some of that detail back. And that might be impossible because the image detail might not be there. But we're going to play anyway and see what we get here. So what we're going to do is we're going to then mask out everything but. So we're going to click on the mask here, and we're going to get our paintbrush out. And we're going to start doing some blacks here, and we're just going to mask out our adjustment. Notice now the blue color cast is going away. We're going to paint out the areas that we don't want to have that blue color cast, which is all this stuff here. And then we're going to have to blend the building back in a little bit here. Not going to worry too much about the skyline, because the skyline is pretty much black, and it's going to be color corrected anyhow, because there is no real color cast to the actual sky. So we'll get our stars back here, so we get the picture back. So there's without the adjustment. Notice I'm going to use the eyeball over here next to the layer to show it and take it away. And I noticed that I got to do a little bit more adjustment here. I got to probably lighten it up a little bit. So why don't we just cut back the opacity on here just to 50 and just see what we get. And I think that's going to probably do it right there. That'll probably blend it nice. Blends in with the front ground and the foreground, and there we go. And I'm still having a hard time getting that color out of there. Another neat thing we could do to try to get more of a neutral color on this, it would be the black and white filter. So what we can do is go down to black and white. So we open up our adjustment layers, go down to black and white, follow along if it's off screen. So here we've just neutralized everything. So we could take our yellows and we could make them darker, we can make them lighter. Notice the building is the main thing that's really just kind of going really hot, really cold. And notice I got the detail back. You can see it right here. If you can see my brush lines right here, you can see that right in that area. That's really giving me the color back. So let me undo the brush tool. Okay, let's play a little bit here. So maybe what we'll do is we'll bring the yellows down just a touch, and the reds up. No, reds down. Got to be down a little bit. There we go. Now that's really kind of sharp for a black and white, but it's just not toned right. So why don't we take and we'll keep working on this a little bit here, and we'll now take and do another adjustment layer, and maybe we'll do levels, and we're going to lighten this up just a touch, and then we're going to make it just a touch more contrasty. Wow, that's really getting sharp. I like this. I really like this. Oh, I should have done the black and white the first time. You know, I was looking at this and I was playing around with this photo the other day, and I really love it. It's because whether it's in color or black and white, it really has some really neat aesthetics to it. It just really has a lot of things to offer from an artistic standpoint. The lines, the contrast, the building can be just absolutely amazing. And I didn't even try the black and white until just now, so I was like, this will be fun. We'll try the black and white on air. So that's what we did. Let's kind of, why don't we just call it done there? And that's a great example of slow shutter too. So keep that in mind. Those cars, you don't see the actual cars. You just see the trails of light, and that's the beauty of having a long exposure. Night photography can be very rewarding and very fun to do, especially since you kind of go out after everybody else. It's not as busy. It's very therapeutic. Go get yourself a cheap little tripod, something, if you got a point and shoot, go get a cheap little tripod, stick it on there. If you got a DSLR, you might have to get a little better tripod to hold it, but still, you don't have to spend a fortune to get a tripod. Get out there and just take some really interesting shots. If you're from the surrounding area, I've done several shots up in Rochester, which is just amazing. Go up on one of the bridges that have a walkway, set your camera up, shoot it over the top of the bridge, and then frame up something nice, and then pull a 20-second shutter speed. You do that on 490 or one of the other overpasses that are fairly busy. It is just amazing some of the things that just pop out at you afterwards. I mean, it's just like light trail after light trail, people passing each other. It really just comes into a does that really exist in real life? And it just kind of gets you thinking. So let me save this, and we're going to save it as a JPEG. The only thing I haven't figured out how to do yet is to make this automated. All right, so let's go back to our original. So here's our original. Again, the building's kind of a little overexposed. You lose the detail. You really, it kind of like washes out. But there's a lot of great pieces to this, and I'll say it again. There's these leading lines with the lights, as you can see with my red mark. You got the leading lines of the building. And then just the absolute star details in all the lights all the way around the scene here is just one of the things that just kind of just stands out for me. So the photo edits we did basically was we tried to neutralize the color, get some of that detail back with the levels and bring out some of that, and then we made it black and white to really sharpen it up a little bit. And so here's the original without the, let me clear the whiteboard. Here's the original, and here's the black and white version. I don't know. I like it. I think it's good. And I'll show you why. I really think the black and white, by making it a little darker here, a little more contrasty, it looks like there is more detail up here. You got all these little different patterns in your the eave here. Back to the original. Notice you don't see those patterns very easily. So turning it black and white and making it more contrasty is sometimes a great thing to do for night photos too, because sometimes it'll neutralize and help you adjust a photo to bring out the most for it. So I don't know. What do you think? If you got an opinion, I'm on the chat in the room for the video feed, live video feed. If not, you can send me an email at thedigitalbabble@gmail.com. You can check us out on Facebook. Just look for The Digital Babble. That's where you can find all our episodes. And as I'm doing more and more of these tutorials and I get the process down in my head to where I can actually explain it better, I'll be putting tutorials up there, product reviews, as well as how-tos on all sorts of things. So maybe you want to take a portrait or something, and that's going to be a future show. So that was photo one. We're at 7:30. We got 15 more minutes to do 2 more photos. And again, I just want to express that, getting this camera out and going out and playing is probably the easiest thing to do, but at the same time, you want to know how to change the settings so you can experiment and learn how the camera takes the photos. Like that user's photo there, that was an amazing photo. I mean, it was tripoded, it was all done right. I bet you it was either a shutter release or it was a self timer. So set the self timer, let it go, boom, and it takes a shot. So there's a lot of things that was really done right there. Downside was yes, the picture got a little overexposed in some areas, but as you can see, there's several different techniques that we can try to bring some of that exposure back into check. Another neat thing with a lot of cameras, sometimes you can actually look at the camera and make the adjustments live as you're looking at the photo. So that's always a good thing. Read your instructions, and if you got questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. If you just send your emails to thedigitalbabble@gmail.com. You can also submit photos for review. If you have, I don't care if they're good, bad, ugly. I mean, I'm open to whatever. I don't use names typically, unless you want me to. But you can submit up to 3 photos. Please make sure that they're resized. I don't want to get 10 megabit photos or 10 megapixel photos where takes 20 minutes to download or whatever. Try to keep them small, not real small, but keep them small so that I can get them, I can put them on the computer, I can show them on the video. And that's what's going to make the show, because we're going to have fun, we're going to do some things, and you can kind of follow along in Photoshop if you got Photoshop. If you don't have Photoshop, you can get Photoshop Elements, and you can follow along there. Most any imaging program will have most of these tools, but you're going to have to go hunt for them because they're not readily available necessarily. So let's go on to image 2. This is another nighttime image. I believe this is, I want to say St. Francis, but I can't tell you what one this is. So I really think this person was in New York City. I gotta say, really, this reminds me of my trip to New York City, because I've seen these shots before. Maybe not this angle with this particular eye, but I've seen these shots. So I don't know. Maybe the person's listening in, and maybe they can either put it on the chat or they can email me real quick, and then maybe I'll be able to tell you where they're actually from. But okay, so this photo, I don't know. I keep looking at this. I love the contrast from the highlights here. The overexposed light up here is fine, but it kind of makes it look like the glow is just emanating from inside the building. The patterns up here, you know, you can clearly see the brick all the way up and down here. Nothing is really too out of whack. It's really a wonderful photo. It is a long exposure. I'm almost positive tripoded. The reason why I say it's probably a long exposure is because of the overexposed up here, and this wonderful little light out here kind of tells the tale of a high aperture, high numbered aperture, or low opening. Gives you that star effect. But it's really kind of a neat view. I mean, you know, throwing the angles off, you know, you got, you know, the building actually runs this way, you know, and your horizon runs this way. So here's your horizon. This is your vertical angles of the buildings. It's really kind of a neat angle. I mean, it might have been, I don't know why the person might have done it this way, but it might have been because there might be something distracting over here, or maybe they just liked the way this looked, but it really is kind of sharp. It gives you a totally different sense and a totally different view of a church. And the entranceway being here, I mean, it's really neat. So, what should we do to this? I don't know. I think I really thought heavily about trying to get because we know that these bricks have got to be, I'm pretty sure they got to be probably gray, because that's the only reason why we're getting all this orange light to it. So I'm not wondering if we can't, this one should be a little easier to color correct. So maybe what we'll do is we'll pop back into Photoshop here. All right, we'll take a look at this photo. Let's see if we can't do a color balance. Maybe a color balance will help us out here. Or maybe even a levels. I mean, it's just one of those things where you kind of... There's so many different tools we could play with to see what we could get, you know, and I'm just trying to think of which one would probably be the best. I mean, we could do hue and saturation and shift it. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll shoot hue and saturation and shift the colors. So let's shift the colors back and forth till we neutralize it a little bit. We're gonna bring back, and notice I'm not gonna do a lot of heavy adjustment. I mean, this 25% desaturation is probably pretty hefty, but I think everything else probably is gonna. Yeah, that's too green now. That's too red. That's too green. Yeah, we'll leave it right there. That looks good. That looks good. So now we just neutralize the color. So we go back to our channels. Is there anything I want to mask out? Do I want to bring back that orange color anywhere? Do I want to really resaturate it? Probably not too much. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a hue and saturation again, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if we can't pop the neutral colors, but nope. Notice you desaturate and then you resaturate. It just brings the same colors back. So what we're probably going to have to end up doing is probably do some exposure adjustments. So let's see here. We're going to pull this off, and we're going to get rid of that hue and saturation adjustment. And let's see, let's do some levels here, and we'll see if we can't. I'm just curious. I want to see what this is going to look like when we say this is a white point. Yeah, it's going to neutralize it a little bit, but it's not going to do what I want it to do. Well, let's see. I want to make this a little darker because I mean, it's almost moody. We could almost play with this and do the whole Frankenstein castle thing to it too. You know, this could be very fun to play with, to get this stuff in here. And yeah, somewhere. I'm sorry, dark enough, but we're gonna make it a little darker. All right, let's add a couple things here. I don't know what I want to do with this. I'm so giddy about this photo because it's such a fun photo to work with, and you know, I mean, everybody has their own opinion and own view on everything that goes on with a photo. You know, there's a reason why the person took the photo. I mean, this is just a massive church is just amazing enough. I mean, just the detail and everything. So let's see. I think we're gonna do. I don't think we're gonna adjust anything else. But I think I'm going to play around real quick, and we're going to do the whole Frankenstein castle thing. That could be fun. So we're going to do a new layer. And this is a really neat kind of effect in Photoshop that you can play with. You can add some black and white clouds by changing your colors to black and white. Foreground's black, background is white. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the gradient tool out. And we're going to make a gradient here. So there's a black and white gradient. Then what we're going to do is we're going to filter that, and we're going to say render clouds. And what we're going to do is we're going to soften this up a lot. And probably a touch more. And instead of actually doing an adjustment layer, I'm going to do a adjustment directly to the actual pixels. So we're going to do image adjustment, and we're going to do a little bit of, I got to find it, levels or curves. Well, we'll do curves. We'll just drop it down. So we want the whites to kind of ease up here and be less white. And we want a little more contrast here. And okay, so now what we want to do is we want to make it a soft light or an overlay. We'll try no, overlay's not going to do it. Let's try soft light. Probably not. We're going to do screen maybe. There we go. Screen will do it. All right. So we kind of get the whole there's fog here, you know. Right there's the fog, and now we just got to make it subtle so it's part of the picture but not quite part of the picture. Now we all know that most fog doesn't happen in the front of the building near the windows and stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to mask those out. So what we're going to do is hit a mask here. Now notice that, you know, it just created another mask. We can actually now use our paintbrush or paint tools to mask out any of these clouds where it doesn't really make sense to have them. Like the front of the building here doesn't make much sense. The doorway, you know, the windows, because the windows really should look pretty sharp. All right, over here we're going to call that more and more foggy over there, guys. Bring this up just a touch more so it is more foggy. So it's kind of a neat effect. You can kind of start touching it up and do different things. maybe we don't like this down in the corner. I just noticed this. There's the sign and the poles. Maybe we want to take those out. So let's get back on the original layer, and we're going to take the clone stamp brush, and we're going to just pick a spot. It's all stone. So we hold the Alt key, pick a spot, and then we brush over what we don't want. And you'll notice that it just kind of starts disappearing, which is so neat. I love the clone stamp brush because of the ability to just, yep, it's gone. So that's kind of a neat way of doing that. You can do a lot of different things too. You can take and, repatternize something. You can take the pattern from one side to the other. But I think I'm going to call this one done. I really like this. This is kind of neat. So we're going to leave that there, and we're going to go File, Save As. And we're going to go as a JPEG. And we're going to just save it because it should be already set. All right. So there's the adjustments. That's what we did. And what we're going to do is I'm going to bring it back to the original. So here's the original, a little orange, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Really neat. I really love this photo because of all the converging lines. The building's, off filter. The horizontal line kind of makes you think that you're kind of laying down on the ground. Frankenstein monster came out and whacked you, and now you're kind of like, oh my god, oh look, there's a castle. So kind of a storytelling night, I guess. So that's kind of a neat thing. So there's the original without any lines on it, no whiteboard stuff, and we're gonna go over to what I edited. It kind of makes it a little spookier, I guess. I don't know, kind of neat. Simple little quick edits here that you can kind of play with and work with. So moving right on to image number 3. Image number 3 was submitted by somebody in Seneca Falls after this wonderful snowstorm that we had up in New York about a week and a half ago, I think. It just dumped on us and covered everything in snow, and the person was like, I love this picture. I love the way it looks. I mean, just everything was just covered in snow and nice and so on and so on. But the snow come out gray and blue. Can you fix it? Well, I think we can. So why don't we take it right into Photoshop and we'll start fixing it right now. So first off, we got to neutralize that snow color. That's pretty easy to do with a levels or a curves adjustment. I'm going to do curves this time because both tools have the shadow, the midtone, and the highlight. So we're going to say we want to highlight. We're going to find the brightest part of the snow that should be the brightest part of the snow. I mean, it should be white. So I think we're going to probably say the closest thing is probably this right here. We'll give it a shot. Wow, that really kind of kicked it up just a touch too much. Let's try another spot here. Bring it down a little. Whoops, that's going to get worse. You can keep clicking in the middle, all around until you kind of get, oh, no, that didn't come out bad. Okay, so we've adjusted for our highlights. Now let's adjust for our shadows. What's probably the most shadowy thing in this picture? I would probably say this black area up here near the awning. It's probably the most black. And I think that's going to adjust the picture real nice. Notice how sharp that just whack, and you hit it once and it's just like, there it is. It's just as sharp. There's a lot of contrast. Everything kind of tunes right in real quick. It's really neat. The snow's white instead of being totally gray. You get some white and highlights. The midtones are fairly neutral. Right there, you just color corrected the whole thing. One adjustment layer, 2 clicks. You're done. Now, what do we want to do with this? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of neat. It's kind of like hanging out at the back porch and just kind of, hey, we got it. This is beautiful, beautiful shot. What I really love about it is there's a lot of patterns. There's a lot of different trees in here. There's the fence, of course. Why don't we take the fence out? I don't like that fence. Okay, so we're going to take that fence out. Let's go grab the clone stamp brush, get back on our base layer. We're going to zoom right in because I don't want to goof this up. All right, so we're going to grab some of that snow next to it, and we're just going to paint it away, and paint it away, and we're going to go to the other side and paint it away. Now notice over here we got a different color of snow, so we're going to have to be a little more careful. We're going to have to select our color of snow and kind of paint a little bigger area just so it kind of disappears without looking out of place. And that's the fun thing about photos is that, you never know if it's 100% real or not because you can get in here and do all this. So that's not too bad. Let's do this here. There we go. What I really love about this shot too is that the fact that it's so easy to correct this kind of shot. You got a lot of black and white or black, gray, and white in a shot, and it's gone color cast funny, you know, like you got a lot of blue in it for some reason, and the grays are blue, and the whites are kind of gray, and the blacks just kind of are muddy, you can easily take it, one adjustment layer, the curves layer, and just go in and grab, I'm going to open this up again, and grab one of these three droppers here. Highlight, midtone, or your shadows. And what it does is it not only sets the neutrality of the color, but it also sets the exposure and the contrast. And it's just so fantastic to be able to just go whack, 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 and you're done. And now you have a base photo to work with. So I think I'm going to do one other edit here, and this is kind of a neat edit. This is a neat way to sharpen your photos too. Control-Shift-E, what that does is gives us a composite the way it is. So what you see is what you got, this top layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it through a high pass filter. So other, so we're going to go to filter and other, and then high pass. And we're going to set it to about, I don't know, probably 8. And we're going to put it, notice it's kind of a black and white grayish kind of thing, but all the edge detail is super exemplified. So what we can do is now change the blend mode to a soft light, and you now just sharpen that photo that much. So without the sharpening, notice how it looks, and with the sharpening, totally just like, wow, now all the trees just kind of pop right out. Oh, look at me, here I am, here's my branches, here's my snow, you know. So that's kind of the neat thing there. So let's save this back. So we're going to go File, Save As, because we're just about out of time. JPEG. Yep, okay. Yes, I want to replace it. Okay. Now let's pop back over to our original, number 3. Here is the original that was submitted to us. And here is the photo edits. With what, three edits total? We did a sharpening, we did a curves adjustment, and we took out the fence poles. So if you remember, we took out the fence poles here. We ultimately set our white balance to this area of snow here. We set our shadow up here to that area. So that was our shadow. This is our highlights. And we removed these. And then we sharpened all this stuff. So what we got was this. That's a pretty neat picture. I like that. That's a fun picture to adjust. Those are the nice ones. You know exactly what to do with them. It's not trying to figure out, well, you know, I want to do this or I want to do that. It really does have a nice easy access to saying, hey, let's just adjust it and go. And it's a great photo. I mean, you know, just to see all the snow and everything the way it is. So that's the Digital Babble for this week. So episode 2, I'm Flipper, I'm your host. I'm a photographer, I'm a photo editor, I'm a computer junkie, you name it. I'm a jack of all trades. So if you want to give us an email, please give us an email with your photos. If you want to send in photos for us to adjust or edit, it's thedigitalbabble@gmail.com. If you got questions about your equipment, you can also send in questions, and I'm more than happy to try to research it and get you answers. You guys are what makes the show, the listeners, the watchers. That's what we're looking for. So I wish you everybody the best, and we'll see you next week.
A Flipside Studio production. It's the Digital Babble. Tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on fingerlakes1.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter.